Welcome to the milestone 25th Miami Jewish Film Festival, the world's largest festival of its kind. We want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, and all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for their continued support throughout all of these years. My name is Debbie Hurwitz, and I am the Director of Access and Outreach Services for Jewish Community Services. I'm very excited to be moderating a virtual conversation with the director, writer, and producer, Nira Burstein, from the movie Charm Circle that is premiering at this year's festival. Thank you all again for joining us. Nira, it's so very nice to meet you. I'm in awe of your talents at such a very young age, and I'm presuming it's a young age.
You can let me believe that for now.
Okay. First of all, let me congratulate you on completing your first documentary film. I understand that you have created other short films, but mostly fiction. This film in particular is nonfiction and focuses on your family, their struggles, their pain, and trauma. Yet despite their dysfunction, they are functional in their own way. And the film clearly shows how they've dealt with some very challenging issues with pride, dignity, and above all, love. So my first question is, how and when did you decide to direct and produce this film? Wasn't it difficult filming and directing a film about your own life, your family, your childhood home? What was your overall experience with this?
Well, I started filming maybe 6 years ago in like 2015. And, narrative or documentary, I think that I've always been interested in the personal in some capacity. And I think that's, where I get inspiration from. So it didn't seem that unnatural for me to make a documentary about my family, even if, I made narrative projects before.
Yeah, but there were some pretty heavy issues in that film.
Yeah. I mean, it's real. It's the truth, and hopefully some people will relate to it and find things that resonate with them, right? That's the point of sharing these tougher things.
Yeah, that's true. You touch upon, as I mentioned, some very heavy and serious issues pertaining to your parents who had very promising careers in their own right, but then unfortunately suffered some mental health issues and breakdowns. Your sister Judy's developmental disability, addictions related to smoking and alcoholism, your mother's comment about suicide showing the hoarding behavior, and your sister's Adina's choice to have two female partners and a commitment ceremony, which your father clearly objected to initially because of it being against Jewish law and religious values. And then issues pertaining to communication and relationships. All this was so heavy. I think I watched the film 3 times to really get a good feel for it. And each time I saw it, I saw something else. How did your family feel about you doing this film?
Well, before, I just want to correct you on one thing.
Okay.
My sister's partners are non-binary. They don't identify as women. And even though my mom and my dad describe them as women, my sister corrects them. I didn't want to change anyone's voice, but technically, they are non-binary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem. And I really, I get asked this question a lot about what they think about the film, and I have to be very careful not to speak for anyone else, right? But before this film went public, I sat with my whole family, all 5 of us, and we watched a rough cut together of the movie, and it was a very emotional experience, and a lot to sort through, just as you said, a lot to think through, right? But no one objected to the film, and no one had any notes in terms of, oh, you can't put this in, or you have to put this in, or there was a really amazing amount of support and trust to make the film.
Wow.
And I think that, that speaks to how they feel about it.
Speaks very highly of them individually and as a family, not to have any major edits or critiques. They must be very proud of you too.
I think so. I think my parents especially, like, you know, they came to the New York screening that just happened in November at Zach and YC, and it was, you know, very festive for us to be together like that, you know.
Yeah. There were so many touching moments, you know, when your sister Adina, I think, came home, and the hugs and the overall hug at the very end, you know, when your sister had the commitment ceremony. I remember also, you know, your mother's strong desire to have sex with your father, you know. Just some really touching moments. In spite of all the other issues, there's still that, you know, that thread of love and family. Um,
I think that's what makes things work, you know, is that in terms of being something hopefully people want to watch, right? Because it's very hard to watch something that is only tough. And so the love and the support and the sweetness and the humor and the creativity, there's so many things about the people in my family that I also celebrate. So it's about juxtaposing the difficult and the more sweet moments to balance things out.
you know, I give you a lot of credit because, and you know, until you're in that situation, you don't really know. Some people who may have experienced this would reject their family, would not, you know, would be embarrassed by their behaviors and their issues. You've celebrated this in a sense, because I think, like you said earlier, you're sharing this information to hopefully allow others to learn from what you've learned. And that's really amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
You did an amazing job of weaving in the old family footage. Some very happy moments, some very sad and difficult moments with the present day filming, trying to paint a picture of what was then and what's reflected in the present. You can clearly tell that the dysfunctionality of it all, through the dysfunctionality of it all, there's a great deal of love, as I mentioned before, and caring about one another. Your father, Uri, I thought, in reference to the family, made a really interesting comment. He said something to the effect that when you're in it, meaning in a family, you don't know anything different. It all seems very normal because that's your family. And then he states, when you make a deal, it's a contract for life, for better or for worse. And I guess that's pertaining also to their marriage. I thought that was a very touching and telling statement. Why do you think this story was so important to tell?
I mean, for reasons just like that, you know, that idea, and it's not even necessarily just family, I think, that he's talking about. It's any situation you find yourself in. It could be your job, it could be, you know, your friends. I don't know, but we get used to maybe certain, you know, elements or people in our lives and the dynamics of it, and forget that, well, is this really what I want to be doing? Is this really the dynamic I want to be having? And we forget that we might have choices. At the same time, there's something really beautiful about continually showing up for people despite, you know, a lot of challenges, right? And so I really wanted to honor both of those ideas, you know?
Yeah, it was really difficult. I found at times, and you'll excuse me, I found it very painful at times. You know, my heart was reaching out to your mother on one hand, and then reaching out to your dad on another level, because he sounded so angry at times and so frustrated, you know, with the thought that he could have been something bigger, you know. I mean, both of them apparently are musically inclined. Both of them share a love for music and have their own professions. I mean, he was a very successful realtor at one point. Your mom was an OT. And then, you know, whatever happened. I'm in awe of what you were able to show throughout this documentary.
And I appreciate you sticking with it.
You know, I thought it was very well done, very well done. What did you find as the most difficult or challenging part of making this film, and what was the most enjoyable?
I say the most challenging was when tensions were high, being in the house filming, also being in the supermarket with Judy and my mom at the store. That was really tough because I was competing with my desire as a family member to intervene and versus being a filmmaker trying to just document what's going on. And I'm really glad I didn't intervene because first of all, I knew it wasn't going to get so out of hand that things would, get completely out of control. But also because this was very much for me like a reality in terms of and sharing okay, this is what it's like to go outside and how that can be something as simple as just going to the store. It can be, an ordeal. Mm-hmm. These are very simple things that for people that maybe, do you have someone in their lives that's developmentally disabled, recognize right away, and then it resonates with them and they might feel less alone. And then for someone who doesn't, now they know a glimpse of what that might be like. And maybe, I don't know, develop compassion or something like that. But I'd say, the funnest for me was editing. I wouldn't really call myself a writer. You said I was director, writer, producer. I would say I was more the director, editor, producer, because I really did not write this movie.
Well, but you had to come up with an idea, and you had to come up with, thoughts about how you were going to do this and under what circumstances you were going to do this. So you had to put it together somehow.
Yes, but I think that was through editing. And as opposed to writing, because there's no voiceover for me. I didn't write, it was about crafting and all the elements, including the past and the present day footage as a conversation that brings, to the forefront certain ideas.
So you mentioned you made a comment about separating yourself as a family member and as the director. That in and of itself must have been really challenging, like wanting to intervene not only in the supermarket, but when your parents, had a discussion about something, or if your sister said something, or, if you, whatever it was, not to step in and say, no, don't say that, or no, what about, that must have been tough.
Yeah, figuring out the right, obviously I do engage with my family, and I think it's always very clear when I told my family I was starting to film, you're not supposed to pretend like it's not me behind the camera. It is me behind the camera. The person behind the camera. Treat me as if you're just talking to me. But, I really only, interjected or asked questions when I felt it necessary, and I think I would have been more involved if I wasn't filming. But I think that's the appropriate line when you're filming. It can get very weird and meta, I think sometimes. And sometimes it works when someone's behind the camera talking, but I think oftentimes it's distracting. I think you have to choose.
I'm just curious, how much time did you have to spend on editing this whole thing, the process? You must have had hours and hours of film.
It was definitely, significant hours, though I would say compared to other documentaries, not as much, I hear about docs having 300-400 hours of films. I have more around 100. So, but it's still crafting, documentary doesn't, yes, you have 100 hours of 300, but figuring out, okay, which line goes where is still a very complicated process. And I began editing pretty much right from the beginning of shooting.
And you said you started this in 2015.
Yeah.
Now it's 2021. Yeah. That's 6-year process.
Yeah. And I did have another editor, Michael, who also edited a lot of the scenes. So it wasn't just me.
Mhm.
I started editing, then he came on board, and then I took over the film again and edited the last 2 years.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Was there an important lesson that you took away from this experience? And if so, what is that lesson? And would you do anything different in hindsight?
I do anything different. I mean, I'd have a better camera rig. A lot of times I'm like, "Rah," because it was like, I had like a monopod without a fluid head, and I'd be like, navigating this messy floor, and it's just, I couldn't be handheld. But there's so many lessons that I learned, obviously. I think it's not what the film is about, but I think that underneath it, I think you can see, an evolution, of just opening yourself up to understanding, people that you don't really always know where their choices come from, or like how they got to where they are, And I hope, obviously I want people to see this movie and, appreciate my family, but I also want them to think about their family and the people that they know. It's really about taking this back with you, and reflecting on your life. That's what I really, really hope for.
And to learn patience and understanding of people who are different in whatever capacity, whether it's a mental disorder or a physical disorder, developmental disorder, is to have the compassion that we need to have for other people that are different.
Yeah.
What are you working on now?
What am I working on now? Well, I've been doing a lot of writing, back to narrative. I'd love to do a narrative feature. And then I'm also in the development stages of a documentary that, I can't really talk too much about just yet. But it also involves footage that I shot 10 years ago, but not my family. In a different way of family, right? But friends and stuff, and just kind of following them where they are now. And I think it's an interesting project, and I'm really excited about it. And I love narrative and doc. I love them both. I think they both have their challenges.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask also. Since you did this back in 2015 and it's now 2021, I'm sure some of the viewers are anxious or curious to know how your family is doing now, because they moved, they sold the house. I thought it was really interesting, the hoarding kinds of behavior and the house, the way it looked so full, and at the very end empty. That must have taken hours and hours to clear that house. And where are they now? And are they in a similar kind of situation?
I mean, they sold the house and they moved to an apartment, also in Queens. And, it's a story that continues to evolve. You know what I mean? By moving, it was one of the greatest things that they had done for themselves in terms of.
But probably one of the most difficult things as well.
Yeah. But it was a fresh start. There was the challenge of moving, but the amazing thing is that my parents both said they don't miss the house at all. So that's good in terms of like not having that, oh my God, what am I doing here in this new place kind of thing. But life continues to be a roller coaster, right? Ups and downs. That's the reality. But there's always like the idea of promise and change and hope is a beautiful thing.
And now they have documentary of the house in the film, so they have something they can look back on and not completely forget about it, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to forget anyway.
Memory.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, time capsule.
So I'm just curious, if this film has been shown elsewhere, how has the reception been? And does it vary according to location and audience?
Well, I mean, it's been pretty incredible. Like the film has played all over the world. And we're nearing having played almost every continent. And
Oh, wow.
and it's just it's incredibly it's I'm sure there are people that the film does not sit well with, but the people that I have met have been extremely warm and moved by the film, and it's been very wonderful sharing this with like a community much bigger than I thought existed.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
And how are your parents doing?
they're doing pretty good.
Yeah. And your sisters?
Yes, yeah,
That's good.
living life.
Is there anything that I've missed that you'd like to share with us, that in terms of the questions that I've asked, did I miss anything that you would like to bring out or share with the audience?
Just I hope that people if they this is a movie that's being shown online, and so there's a little bit of time. If they saw it earlier in the festival, they can maybe share it with other people they know, and start a conversation.
When did the film get first released?
It premiered at Sheffield Doc Fest in June
June of
2021.
2021. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have any other questions, unless there's anything else you'd like to share with us.
I think I feel good. I feel like we covered it.
All right. I want to thank you, Nora, director and producer of the movie Charm Circle, for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedule from editing and directing and excuse me, and producing. Once again, I would also like to thank all of our members and sponsors and community partners and volunteers and all of you film lovers for participating in this milestone 25th Miami Jewish Film Festival. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.